Hello, and welcome to episode number 291 of the Board Game Barrage podcast, a podcast about board games, the latest hotness, and how to have fun with your friends, even when you're losing. I am Kellen, the Red Tank, the best host of all, joined by my friends Mark and Neelan.
Hello.
Hello.
Today on the show, you all said it couldn't be done, and we didn't take "it couldn't be done" for an answer. We're bringing back the illustrious, the illuminous, the irreplaceable board game draft. But what, you ask, do you draft when you've run out of games in the top 1,000?
Games from the list 1001 to 2000.
Yes, starting now.
Here we go, boys. No, we will not rest on our laurels, and instead we will rest upon the laurels of one of the greatest board game designers of all time, one Mr. Reiner Knizia. Today you will see the top Reiner Knizia games of all time drafted by us. You will vote on who has the best list of Reiner Knizia games, 5 each, and the winner will get a $50 gift card. Actually, you know what we should do? We should get a $50 gift card in addition. Like, so we spice it up so, like, we're excited. You know what I mean?
Right. we should get Dr. Knizia to send us $50.
Yeah, why are we giving the people the money? Like, I mean, we can give the people the money, but we should
also get the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, we deserve the money.
Right. Agreed.
But before we do that, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing. Neelan is going to start us off with Empire's End. Not a game historically about America. And then I will jump to a Kickstarter game that goes live today as you're hearing this. My favorite things with no I in front of it. My favorite things. It's a trick taker. So that's the back call for all you trick takers. Dun 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 dun. And then Mark will finish us off with Four Horsemen, a game I was excited about until I learned it was a co-op. Neelan, why don't you kick us off with Empire's End?
Yeah, Empire's End is a lovely little medium-weight game from John D. Clare and published by Brotherwise Games. Kellen and I believe spoke of this when we demoed this, possibly on a bonus episode like maybe a year ago. The best place to start with this it's the easiest place to start, so it is a Eurified no thanks. Okay, if you're not familiar with what no thanks is, then the basic premise of no thanks is that you are all at risk of receiving a bad card. And in order to stop yourself from receiving a bad card, you put out a chip. In the case of Empire's End, it's a resource. So the card will say, this is a fire. It's going to affect one of your Euro locations. You put out a resource to keep the fire at bay. The next person...
One of your Euro locations.
Yeah. Then the next player then has to do the same. You keep going around in a circle, putting out a resource until someone's like, you know what? That's a lot of resources sitting on that card right now. I could use all of those because those are all collectively going to the pot each turn. At some point, they say, I'm willing to take the bad card. I'm willing to lose this location, which is worth a lot of points at the end of the game, is giving me some ongoing benefit, but I'm willing to lose it so that I can get all of these resources. You might be doing that because you're out of resources to bid. That's the basic premise of the no thanksiness of this. What Empire's End does is it does kind of what I've alluded to already. It turns each of those potential losses into ongoing benefits, an economy, victory points at the end of the game. In addition, you also get like a special power when you take that card. So there's a little bit of an upside, a little bit of downside. And every so often, you're utilizing the resources that you still have hidden behind your screen. You're utilizing the abilities you still have on your locations. You're utilizing the special powers you've received, either from getting them in these disaster phases or through just adding them during one of the upgrade phases to your tiles. You're using all those resources to do things. That might be swapping locations. That might be converting resources to other resources. That might be repairing some of the locations that got destroyed previously. Or you might be setting yourself up for more end-of-game victory points. And that is really kind of the entire thrust of the game. There's a phase track that alternates between collecting your resources, utilizing those resources for the aforementioned things, and then these disaster phases, which are just more bad things happen, which really are kind of the crux of the game. I loved the premise of this game. I love no thanks. I love the idea of taking that and building it out with Euro-y systems and engine building and getting to the point where you are both engineering a tableau and watching it kind of burn and choosing the parts that you need to sacrifice to continue to keep your engine moving. I think it's a cool idea. I think the thing that's really hard when it comes to a game like this is then you have to ask yourself, would I rather be playing this than, in this case, no thanks? And that's kind of a hard question. I think Empire's End is a great idea, well executed, that maybe runs a little bit long, and at its heart doesn't necessarily have more highs than the simplified version of it does. I do think what it adds onto the system does feel quite compelling, because one of the things that, that separates this from no thanks is that you kind of know at any given point in time what the relative risk is for any other player at a glance. It's a little bit harder to see in Empire's End. So like one example of this is, all your locations are arranged in the same order at the start of the game. So if we know the disaster is coming to a location, let's call it location number 2. Oh, wow, that's everyone's 32-point tile. That's potentially devastating, except one person cannily swapped that to a different location earlier in the game. So they might be reaping the benefit of everyone else's high point location being at risk, but they'll just be reaping in the resources where it gets too high for them to be able to resist. And that, I think, is the thing that's really clever about this. As you're slowly developing your tableau, you're putting yourself into a potentially different situation. Different resources are more useful to you compared to other players. So it kind of evolves substantially as the game goes. Kellen, what do you think of Empire's End?
No thanks.
Perfect.
No, I'm kidding. I think that, to your point, again, this has one of the most beautiful covers I think I've ever seen
on
lovely. Any board game.
I mean, the
ever.
production
I really love it.
General, I think, is quite lovely.
I love No Thanks. I really liked about half of this game and then just felt like it was too long. It's fun. Even just for a system where you can't always bid with the same thing, changes it up from No Thanks, right? It reminded me a bit of Keyflower in that, sometimes it's just a red auction and actually you're flush with resources, but you ain't got red, and so you're in trouble. And so you're sort of bluffing along multiple axes, which was fun and sort of an upgrade from No Thanks. But ultimately, a lot of the decision-making came down to, do I want to lose 30 victory points by flipping this building in exchange for pumping back up my resources? And so it really obfuscates well who's winning and who's losing, because so many of your points are on the board and are then being just flipped over to the other side. Again, I would be medium excited to try this again. It also has I was reading reviews of this. Someone calls it Mr. Space Base does a Civ game, which I love. It's not a Civ game, but I love calling him Mr. Space Base, even though I have met him, so I probably shouldn't call him Mr. Space Base. But Mr. Space Base is using a little bit of the Mr. Space Base fun, where if you have to take a card, you get to upgrade a space. And so, those little permanent upgrades that are making, you feel more powerful as you go, that's sort of baked into it for everybody. So I think there's a lot of clever things happening here, even though ultimately I think I would prefer it to be half as long and potentially even as short as just No Thanks.
Yeah.
But that's just for me. Euro.
I think that the design is also wrestling with that problem a little bit, because there is, at the back of the rulebook, it's hey, you might want to play this game in the speed mode variant, where you start further up the tracks. And that feels to me like an acknowledgement that some people might think it is too long. But the hard part of that problem is the answer is usually play with less players. But I don't think No Thanks gets better as a 2 to 3 player game. So it's kind of struggling against both ends of that problem a little bit.
So a couple of questions as the only person on this podcast who hasn't played it. So when I think of No Thanks and the way you've described Empire's End, I think of staving off destruction, So where does the engine building come from? Do you start out with your engine basically as good as it's going to be and you try to keep it from degrading? Or how does the engine building work?
I would say your engine starts firmly in the midpoint, which is to say that you start with, and I should have said this at the start, I apologize. You start with a bank of locations, which are all the same for all players in exactly the same order. And that's going to be where some of your production happens, some of your abilities. You are slowly destroying those, obviously, as the disasters happen, and you are adding to them as you get these upgrade cards. So it kind of moves a little bit in both directions, depending, honestly, at your cadence.
Right.
But it definitely does feel every turn is am I going to get screwed on this turn?
Yeah.
It's just all the choices are how am I going to get
right.
It isn't, it's there.
Right.
That's definitely there.
Yeah,
People will not like it on the face of that.
Totally. And I think actually probably one of the, I hate to say this, Kellen, but one of the best moments for me in the game was when I did not realize how close to the knife's edge Kellen was skating. And then at some point he flips over his shield I got nothing, guys. I'm going to take this and lose my 32 points. And that was wow, I didn't think anyone was playing it that tight. And,
right.
Kellen could have won the game in a one-turn difference if that had gone his way. But he just...
I just want to say that you're welcome for that dramatic flourish, because I could have pretended like it was a strategic decision and I was actually hiding a bunch, but instead I tipped my hat like a gentleman and just lifted my screen and was like, I'm out. And for that moment.
Yeah, it was a great moment.
And you mentioned how this game goes a little long. How long is it in your experience? It says something like 45 to 60 on the page. Is that a little optimistic?
I think that's optimistic. I think a lot of this is obviously player dependent. We probably had people that were taking too long with their bids, I think is fair to say.
Right.
But
you could have just said Callan.
Yes. I think with the right group at 3 players, this would probably 45 to 60 on the subsequent player would be, I think, manageable.
I doubt anyone could get it to 45. I'm sure someone can, and they'll out me at some point. I would say it's like 60 to 75 with an experienced group. But it is also hard to keep track of who's bid on what, because you're just bidding over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, that's the main thrust of the game. So there was a lot of like, have you gone yet? Or like trying to recount who hasn't thrown in.
Yeah. And so obviously there's been a lot of mentions of no thanks, and you've talked about, would you rather play no thanks than this? Are they close enough that is a question? Like, obviously they're based on the same mechanism, but when it comes to playing a game, like, are they close enough that the choice could potentially be no thanks versus this?
No, I don't think so, because like they're such a different class of weight and length, right? Like, I mean, no thanks is firmly in the filler zone, and this is a medium light strategy game.
Okay.
And I disagree with Neil in there, but that's fine. I think like the highest highs of Empire's End are borrowed from No Thanks.
I agree with that.
And it's more concentrated in No Thanks. So if you don't have a group of tryhards who are willing to say that like card games are just as good as board games, like you may as well play No Thanks. Sorry, Mr. Space Base.
That is Empire's End from Brotherwise Games and Mr. Space Base.
Astute. That's what we call our most glorious listeners.
The Astuties.
And you'll know who you are if you're listening.
If you're astute, will know that for many years, a small card game out of Japan was on my top 50 games of all time. And yes, that could describe half of my top 50 games, but in this case, it describes a game called I, My Favorite Things. And you, dear listener, are in luck because a new version of I, My Favorite Things is now on Kickstarter as My Favorite Things with an I symbol above it. So that's, just to be clear, this game is called My Favorite Things, I symbol, and not I, My Favorite Things, formerly one of my top 50 board games of all time. So if this sounds interesting to you, you can find it on Kickstarter. Thank you, publisher, for sending us a preview copy. In My Favorite Things, I think this is arriving at a very good time for what it is, trick-taking. It is a trick-taking party game where you don't know the value of the cards that you are trick-taking with. By that I mean, you are giving your neighbor a category. And I will read you some of those categories. For example, sci-fi franchises. Okay, so I give Neelan the category sci-fi franchises. And then he has sleeved cards with like multiple cards in it. And he has to write down from 1 to 5 his 5 favorite sci-fi franchises and then his least favorite sci-fi franchise. And he will hand those cards to me. So I will have 6 cards, but they will be hidden in a way that I don't know the value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and hated. All I know is I see Dune, I see Blade Runner, I see Star Wars. Okay? And I have to sit there and figure out which value is which, but I'm going to figure that out while we're playing a trick-taking game. And so Neelan will give me a category, and that category could be favorite films or favorite fruits. That category could be literally anything he wants. My favorite birds, sitcoms I like, the time of day that I like, things I wish I had invented, animals that I could beat in a fight. And so then what happens
Don't you need at least 5?
Excuse me?
Don't you need a list of at least 5?
There's a lot of different types of
like insects.
little rats.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, squish them.
Yeah, okay, good.
So ultimately, right, I'm handed back a list of marks. I've got the sci-fi franchises from Neelan. Neelan has got my favorite movies. And Mark is talking about the bugs that he could step on or whatever. And so then a hand will go, and I'll lead that hand with Dune. I think Dune is the number 1 franchise of Neelan's. And ultimately, it's relatively straightforward. The 1s beat the 2s, beat the 3s, beat the 4s, beat the 5s. So ergo, the best property. But ultimately, that means you have hands that's like George Costanza versus Cloud Atlas versus, Pineapple.
Carpenter Ant.
Carpenter Ant. And the only little wrinkle, the only little but, is that the 0 cards or the hated cards will beat a 1. So if you know someone's favorite thing or their number 1 on a list, that's when you want to try to figure out what your 0 card is. And that's when you play that to sort of upset the hand. So a hated thing can't win a 2, 3, 4, 5, but it will beat someone else's favorite thing, which leads to just really delightful, stupid moments where our friends have to go, is Cloud Atlas actually Kellen's one of his favorite movies? Or no, that's got to be his least favorite movie because that's a polarizing movie. And is convinced, someone could be convinced that it wasn't, but it's actually my 4th favorite movie, which you would know if you had spoken to me for hours of time.
So, for example, like if you play Transformers, right? And I know that's Nealon's clearly his favorite sci-fi franchise, as he said so many times on the show. So then somebody would play Bush Crickets, which is obviously my most hated bug, and then that person would win.
Correct.
Is that how it works? Okay.
And so I was able to outgun, I can't remember who I outgunned, but I used jackfruit, which I knew to be my friend's least favorite fruit, to outgun what was clearly a number 1. But Nealon knew that he had my Avengers card, which was definitely my least favorite film franchise. So it's this lovely sort of mix of actual trick-taking, I would say the lightest amount of trick-taking, combined with get to know you by way of really, really silly moments where, it's George Costanza versus The Sopranos, and then I play plums. And we all laugh at each other and, like, oh, Kellen's playing the plum card. Like, what could that be? Just a very silly game and one that I have loved for many years. Can't speak much to the components. I know what I had was a prototype, but I think you'll know if this is something you're interested in. It is definitely something I'm interested in. If you have a group that likes trick-taking and is willing to play party games, it's a complete no-brainer to me. I think it's just lovely. I think that it gets a little harder with like non-gamers because the sort of function of a trick taker is already a niche. So this is a niche of a niche to whatever degree, because then you might have hardcore trick takers who don't want to party. But I would say cut those people out of your life before you cut out my favorite things. Nealon, how are you feeling about... you've played it in the past, and now you've played it in the non-I version of my favorite things.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, like, even in prototype form, the way that they're handling this with, the vibrant colors and the sleeves and the big cards is lovely. So, like, I assume that's only going to be better in the production form. So, like, that at least is... they're nailing that side of it. One thing that struck me as odd is their current lack of inclusion of topic suggestions, which just feels like an easy value add in, which, maybe they will rectify that for the final Kickstarter. I'm not sure. But the other thing I will say is pretty much exactly what you've already said, which is it does have a specificity to it of being... the times I played this that it's most solid was with people I knew well. We had one lovely game of that over the weekend, and I remember back to when we played it with Christina and Mark. And it was so good in that role because it's just, we all know each other so well. They just really, really, really worked really well. But then the time that we played it, maybe with someone that we didn't know so well, it didn't flex so much in that direction as strongly. And then, like you said, you then also have to capture the people that don't mind it being a trick taker, which, to be fair, I barely think of it as that because it is such a light dusting of that. It's more of a get-to-know-you party game, but with a nice little touch of game-reness to it, which I think is quite lovely.
I only have the English translation of the old rule book, but the old rule book had things in it like rank your top 5 fetishes. So luckily that topic suggestion is not in this manual. Though you could probably play my favorite things after dark.
I mean, Transformers would still work for Nealon with that one.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just Nealon. I don't understand,
Neither do
just
I.
You're living there alone with those inserts and those Transformer mecha figures.
Okay, this is a bit, to be clear. I do not want to be branded as the person that loves Transformers.
Everything in his house is sleeved.
That is my fetish, sleeves.
I see an Optimus Prime in the background.
What?
I see an Optimus Prime in his background. It's like a life-size one of those, like you see at the movie premiere.
Floor to ceiling.
That's right. The bigger the better, right, Neelan?
Yeah, exactly.
Just such a strange body pillow. But if this sounds interesting to you, My Favorite Things is coming to Kickstarter today, right now. It's live. And I will say, for what it's worth, I personally will be backing it. You know, my copy of the original Japanese version was just homemade by me because it's always been hard to find. So I'm eager to have a real copy of this and support a cool game. I'm really glad it's coming back to life. We can hopefully put a link. Well, we can't put a link because it's the day of. So we'll put a link on our tweet.
We'll put a link to Google searching My Favorite Things Kickstarter.
And just don't include the word fetish in that Google search. It will not serve you well. Mark, why don't you move us over to Four Horsemen? The Four Horsemen or just Four Horsemen?
I think just Four Horsemen.
Oh, that's disappointing. But you can go.
My Four Horsemen.
Yeah.
My favorite horseman.
My Four Horsemen.
Anyhow, so I was at Night and Day Games here in Vegas last weekend and got a chance to check out Four Horsemen, which is, as Kellen mentioned earlier, a cooperative game by Jeremy Rowley that just wrapped up a successful Kickstarter campaign, but is still available for late pledges in case what I have to say now sounds interesting to you. So, a couple caveats before I start. The edition that I played was an advanced prototype edition, so some of the art and such that I describe might be a little different than the final published product. That said, it was clearly a quite advanced prototype that we were playing, and I was assured by the designer that it was basically the final form. Speaking of being told that by the designer, my other caveat is that my only play of this was a 4-player game that was taught to us by the designer, for what that's worth. So back to the game. Four Horsemen is, like I said, a cooperative game taking place in a potential apocalyptic future where you play as a god trying to prevent the end of the world while dealing with a main villain and with the titular Four Horsemen. The way it works is, to start, you're going to be selecting a main villain to go up against. That comes with special rules as well as potential special win or loss conditions, etc. You're also going to be assigned or select on your own hero/god. Here, like with the villain selection, there are a wide range to choose from. There are gods from Judeo-Christian, Norse, Chinese, and Egyptian heritages that you can choose from. All of them, as with the villains, very asymmetric as well. Some are good at clearing out the demons that are going to be populating the board. Some are better as tanks, sort of soaking up damage. Some are good as buffing teammates. Then comes the meat of the game, which is where you're going to flip a card that'll have some amount of bad stuff that you're going to all deal with. So each card has 3 sections, and for every round that it stays out, you'll have to deal with a new group of bad things to deal with. These cards also act as a timer of the game. And so every round, the longer they stay on the board, up to a maximum of 3, you're going to have to deal with more and more bad stuff. However, you can, as a team, decide to pour some relatively large amount of resources to try to wipe the card off the board altogether. Which is sort of an interesting decision. Do we want to deal with a little slow drip of damage round to round, or do we want to pool our resources and do something, spend a lot of them right now to not have to deal with it for the rest of the game? Speaking of decisions, after that card has been flipped and the bad stuff happens, you're going to make your first decision of the round, which is a bit of a deck building and card management. You're going to have a deck of cards, and you're going to choose 4 to play every round. All 4 will generally give you benefits, and whichever card you assign to the 4th slot, which is the sacrifice slot, is going to give you the most benefits, but also is going to be discarded out of the game. So every round you're going to have a hand of 5 cards, 4 you're going to play, and the one that you play in that last slot will give you the biggest benefit, but is going to be sacrificed for the rest of the game. There's a lot more to talk about here, and I couldn't get into all of it, but I do want to mention another really interesting aspect of the game, which is that when it comes time for players to act, everyone does so simultaneously. So certainly not the first time that I've ever seen it, but something that is relatively rare in this kind of Euro-esque co-op. You get it with some kinds of co-ops, but I think generally with these Euro-style co-ops, you don't get that everybody play at the same time thing. It was an aspect that I thought really helped keep things moving, so I like that. And I got to say that I did like a whole lot about this game. I'm not the biggest co-op guy in the world, and I know that replayability can be a little bit of a mirage when it comes to people playing a game only once or twice generally before moving on. But I really feel like if you've got a group that is into co-ops and really like sinking their teeth into something, Four Horsemen is something I would really recommend. I'm not sure about what you get at the various pledge levels, but the amount of like big bad guys and heroes/gods that you can play is pretty remarkable. The range and the selection, the asymmetry among all the choices that you get is pretty cool. As I said, I only played the one game, but I also appreciate how generally quickly it moved along again with the simultaneous play. So those aspects were positives for me. Also, while we may not have been playing with some of the final components, we did get a chance to look at what I believe to be the final art. And I thought that was really, really solid as well, which is cool with like all the different, sort of characters from history and mythology. Honestly, if you're high into co-ops, if your co-ops are high on your list of your favorite types of games, I'd say that at the very least, take a look at Four Horsemen, which is a game that feels like it might have flown a little bit under the radar with as much as it has to offer. So that is Four Horsemen by Jeremy Rowley and Win-Win Board Games. And again, late pledges are still available, at least at the time of this podcast is out. So yeah, I would suggest if you're a big fan of co-ops, check it out.
Let me just ask you this, Mark.
Yes.
Right. Is this one of those things where you're being asked to review the pizza while the chef's like staring at you, looking in your eyes?
That is a fair criticism. And
is he standing behind you?
Mark, blink if you really like this game.
He was there.
He's blinking.
He was there.
Profuse blinking.
I'm not going to pretend that he wasn't there. And obviously that might taint my view subconsciously, but I really did like it. I mean, again, the range of characters and the asymmetry was really, really cool. And for those who've seen it, who've taken a look at it, it's like a big thing. There's like a lot of things going on. It has a little bit of that kitchen sink quality to it where you've got like the co-op aspect. You've got a little bit of that pandemic, like demons are filling the board. You got to fight them back. Although it's definitely not like a pandemic clone or leaning that much into pandemic. Again, you got deck building, you've got resource management, you've got a lot of stuff going on, but it works pretty well. And for, a game that was 4 players that could have easily gone, 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 2.5 hours for our first play, which again was taught to us by the designer, but then he sort of like walked away with his hands off. It went probably 90 minutes, which felt great. And again, a lot of things going on. And one of my big problems with co-ops can be the quarterbacking of it. And this game is not certainly immune to it, but the fact that everybody's acting at the same time did cut down on that. So, I don't like when a game can sort of drag on. That's a co-op and you're feeling like you're waiting for people and you don't want to give them your advice because it's going to slow things down or take advice. This moved at a nice clip and offered like a lot of stuff. So, yeah.
Neat. I mean, you got me interested in checking it out at least. It's probably the biggest mark here for cooperative games at least.
Yeah.
All right, we are going to roll right on to the return, the anticipated return, the not unanticipated. What's the opposite of like long? Well, what is long anticipated return of the draft series where we draft 5 games each, 5 board games from a larger list of board games, and then you, the loyal listeners, will vote. The astute and loyal listeners will vote at BoardGameBarrage.com/draft on their favorite list. You will win a $50 gift card. We will win a $50 gift card. New rule. Today, we are drafting Reiner Knizia games. We're starting with Reiner because he has so many of them. That is going to kick us off. Does anyone remember what was like the final tally? I think Nealon was the big winner. Winner.
I think that's right, but I will double confirm just so we get the order correct.
Not even of the last one. I think he just like ran away with it, and then
Mark, that's interesting. I would like to see what the scores were for the full 1,000. Actually,
Mark was the biggest loser.
I was the big loser. I started strong, but sort of shot my wad early.
Not in an Ozempic sort of way.
Typical Mark.
Ooh, I even remember. This must have been me. No, I don't think I did win the last one. I think this was a Kellen win for the last one, followed by me.
Say it again.
Okay, so it's my choice in terms of draft order.
You start
That's
by
right.
picking your order. Yeah, your placement.
Oh, boy. He's got a lot of good games. Can I last 3? Is it worth
If anyone is curious, when I was looking at this, 800 at least listed games by Reiner Knizia.
That we know of.
Yeah, that we're aware of. No, actually, I guess not at least. Anyway, whatever.
This is like children, right? So, Nealon, of the children that you have on their birth certificates, like the actual number is probably double.
Okay, I'm going to say that I think that the roster here is deep enough that the wise choice is to go 3rd. I think that there's enough high-end quality here that picking 1st and then 6th is worse than picking third and fourth. That's my choice. So Nealon, you're up next.
This is a tough decision. I didn't want to have to make it. Let me look at this real quick. I'll go for first pick.
Done. See, like that's what the people want to see. You know, a man betting on himself. And then Mark, we have instinctually choosing to hide and go last.
I think picking third is the
I
gutsy
think
call.
I think third is. I wouldn't say gutsy, but I think third is actually
extremely
a good pick.
Gutsy, brave.
No, I think third is probably what I might have done as well
if you had the bravery of me.
If I was as brave as you.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is weird how big of a difference there is between third, second, and first. Even though third would have been my first pick, I don't think second.
It's locked in.
It's locked in. First pick.
And what I would say is the people like gumption.
Gumption.
You know what I mean?
Gumption. Yeah. Gumption is rewarded.
Yeah.
Always make
so
the
you
brave
guys-
choice.
Exactly.
Cowering over. I'm gonna go third. Do I? Don't I?
Yeah.
You had no choice. You didn't have. You were
Well,
It doesn't think about. Acting like you're Mr. Step in front of it and just do whatever needs to be done. You didn't have any choice to make.
I feel like we're not going to get it, but I'm curious to know what Kellen's first choice would have been.
Of course. Oh, yeah, it's going to be picking first.
Absolutely, you're never gonna get. Listen, my job when I have no decision making is to psych you two out, which I do perfectly every week with aplomb. You know what I'm saying?
You are Mr. Aplomb. I've always said that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And I'm sharing the link on the Discord.
Thank you, sir. I can't believe we're back here again.
This very unique combination of excitement and stress is exactly what I missed about the draw.
I love it.
Thank you. Wait, why are some of these already colored in? Oh, wait. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Yeah, you got to go to the Reiner tab. Do you know how the tabs in Excel work?
Find
Yeah,
it to
thank
the
you.
bottom. You just click it. You just
Okay.
hover your mouse over.
Nealon's a creative. What people don't know, like Mark and I are
Yeah,
businessmen. Nealon,
Never seen an Excel
Last time-
sheet in my life.
yeah,
He's too busy living in the world of Transformers, imagining himself with Bumblebee doing stuff that we shouldn't be talking about on the show.
That's not who I had imagined myself with.
Oh,
in that
who are you? You more of like a Star Screecher or whatever. The one. You know what? I always liked the one that had the tape player that you could put other Transformers.
Oh, the one that turned into the tape deck?
Yeah. What's the name again, Nealon?
Oh, no. What does it turn into a cassette? or a
Oh,
tape
acting
deck?
like you don't know. Oh, just
I don't remember.
Nealon,
I
Mark-
don't know. It turns into a
This
Yeah, it turns into like a
cassette,
boombox,
right?
like a.
you very quickly started talking about your fantasy transformer.
Well-
like before I could even say anything,
Yeah.
you're like, "Yeah, I have one. I'll answer the question."
Yeah, I
It's
feel
the
like
tape
Mark
deck
is
one.
projecting a lot here.
Oh.
That was
I'm
awfully
just a
quick.
red-blooded. I'm just a red-blooded man. What can I tell you?
Yeah, I mean, my answer was Megan Fox.
Oh.
I guess the tape player one counts too.
I'm sticking with the tape player one.
All right. Okay. We got to get back to this. We're so distracted. But here we go. This is a draft of the best Reiner Knizia games. At the end, we will each have a list of 5 Reiner Knizia games, the only true and living Dr. Reiner Knizia. Nealon, with the first selection of the draft, you have the floor.
Okay, so I do think that there are a lot of great games in the top spot here, but I do think that there is one that definitely stands head and shoulders above the rest on this list. Tigris and Euphrates. Don't want to bury the lead. That is my first pick. We know it is immensely popular with our audience. It is a frequent high placer in like our previous listener drafts. It's a much beloved game. It has a wealth of strategy. It's very tried and tested. It has been, I would say, like impressing over and over again anyone that discovers it. It is a delight of a game.
Weird to pick a game that Reiner himself thought was so messed up that he created a better version of a couple years later. So, whatever. You could pick it though.
Well, you know what, Mark? Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Ordinarily, I might agree with you. I'll say it. I prefer Yellow and Yangtze, but that is not a popular opinion.
Okay.
Hey, Nealon,
Yeah.
why don't you go see the wizard and ask him for convention? All right, here I go with the middle pick. I was a middle child. Let that tell you whatever it needs to about my psychology. I I think I will zig where others zag. Neelan will take you down the tried and true. I am going to draft on the bleeding edge of hotness. Am I touching something? I'm going to draft Vadis with my number 1 pick, the latest negotiation game from Mr. Reiner Knizia. It is a redo of Qua Vadis, a very good negotiation game that we've covered in the past on the show. It has been redone with art from Kwanchai Moria. I never know how to end that one. And Bitewing Games has done a loving job. This game is all the rage right now. Everyone wants to play it. It's very short. It's very good. We are in the Before You Play video, and by we, I mean me and Christina, the 2 best colored tanks, getting by Monique in the game. This is a great one. It's one everyone should try. Negotiation games aren't for everyone, and that's a little bit of the should this be a first draft pick, but it's a excellent game. And we're riding the hot hand. This is the latest video, I believe, that Shut Up and Sit Down has done at the time of this recording, and I will ride that all the way to the
At least Kellen picked a game that, again, was the future implementation of a game that Knizia had done, earlier on. So he's...
And he had the gumption to ride Shut Up and Sit Down's coattails?
Are you kidding me? What do you think? They watched Before You Play's video and said, wow, Kellen's having a great time with this thing.
I'm going to join Kellen on the bleeding edge and talk about another recent release recent re-release, I should say, from Dr. Knizia. I'm also going to go with the hometown pick. As a proud Egyptian American, there's no choice for me other than Ra, which is probably my favorite of Knizia's games and one of my favorite auction games in general. It blends all of Reiner's best attributes. It's got the very simple rules. It's got the high pressure when it comes to the auction, when you're the last person in the auction and you can take as many tiles as you want and everybody else is rooting for the raw tiles to come up to have the round end. Just such a great classic game. A new version just released by 25th Century Games, breathing new life into an already fantastic game. So easy choice for me. Raw is going to be my first pick.
Yeah, I was pretty sure it was going to be Raw. The question just is, where do you go from here? Because the Raw Vadis, you might not want both on your list, but you definitely probably want one in this first.
You think they play in the same sort of space?
No, but they're both lighter-ish. I don't know. They're both partier-ish in the catalog.
Yeah, exactly.
For Reiner Knizia within this niche that we're looking at.
Okay, this one now is a little tougher for me. Tough call for me, but I'm going to go with my favorite of his remaining games. Another of his auction games. So I'm going to have picked 2 of his big auction trilogy. This is going to be Modern Art. Again, another quintessential Knizia design, has been reprinted a number of times in different versions, but the Knizia hallmarks of very straightforward design with a lot of tough choices. If you like auction games, this offers a number of different ways to do auctions. You got the once around, you've got the hidden bid, you've got a whole bunch of things. And also another thing that I love from Knizia games, which is the emergent theme. Another great example of this is the game that Neon selected, Tigris and Euphrates, where it feels like an abstract game, it looks like an abstract game, but the way that it's played, the ways that the rules are implemented make it feel like a civilization fighty game. And same goes with Modern Art, the way that you're speculating on the art and the way that you're rewarded by going with the hot artists, and the fact that when artists aren't popular, their value plummets, does feel very thematic in a speculative, economical sort of world. So my first pick of the second round is going to be Modern Art.
It's hard. That one is perhaps his best, my favorite, when you have the group that is grouping with it. I won't butter you up, or I don't know, what's a idiom for what?
What?
Did you say? I didn't. That got a little weird. But with the second pick of the draft, I am going to defensively block Neelan, something I like to do at all periods of the day, and draft the Quest for El Dorado, an absolutely fantastic deck building game. This is a deck building game by way of a race, and unlike races, the modern races of Heat, this actually feels like a race and is fun like a race. In the Quest for El Dorado, you are traversing different types of terrain. You are going over hexes, you are trying to round and collect treasure and make it back before everyone else. I will say that This is the second highest rated Reiner Knizia game in all of BGG, right?
Right.
What is this ranked?
Yeah.
This is ranked 122 overall, best game of all time, with a lot of people ranking it. This is one that I love to have. Christina, this is in Christina's top 50. This is in Neelan's top 10?
My top 20,
If it's
I wanna say.
top 20, yeah. An absolutely great game, and one that I only hesitate minorly because my list is a little lighter than it could be. And see, I have so much gumption that I'm not afraid to share what I'm thinking. Like, I have so much of it, it's springing forth that I'll even tell you where I could be attacked. And that's how I play this draft. Neelan, what are you going to select? And please just confirm you were, in fact, going to select the Quest for El Dorado.
Yeah, I would definitely would have taken it. I don't think there's any two ways around that. Like, I mean,
Blocked!
I'm a little, I mean, maybe not surprised because I do know a little bit, some insight into how you pick. But I do know what my first pick is going to be. And that is going to be Blue Lagoon, which is also very much in my top 50. One of my absolute favorite, in fact, probably, I guess that makes it in my top 3 favorite Knizia games personally. Blue Lagoon is an incredible game. It's actually one that I've been returning to recently a lot and kind of rediscovering the joy of it, like just how well it flexes for both new players and, you know, experienced gamers. It has the core of just like being able to block players, being very interactive while giving you all these sort of conflicting like scoring conditions to go for. It looks gorgeous as well. Blue Lagoon's lovely.
Also, its greatest claim to fame, the first ever BGB Game of the Year. First and only ever, I think.
Wait, what was the context for that?
We used to do a Game of the Year list.
We crowned
crowned one.
You see Game of the Years?
And it won Game of the Year in our very first year. And we never did
I
it
didn't even
again.
remember that. That's so long ago. But that's amazing. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's well deserved. Secondly, I am going to pick Lost Cities. I think Lost Cities is such a classic in the two-player realm. Talk about a game that is deliciously light, but just incredibly rewarding time and time and time again. I have never not played a game of Lost Cities and felt like it was intense and stressful and frustrating and just great. A lovely head-to-head battle game. Very time-tested, very classic. Lots of love for Lost Cities.
It's such an interesting one because of the hot and cool hand. Like, I would say that in the all-timer list with no accounting for time, Lost Cities would have to be like a top 2 pick or perhaps even like the de facto number 1 pick. But like the coolness of it is a question for me and led me to not have it on my short list. But again, I'm not downgrading what you're doing. Like, I think it's right up there, right?
Yeah, my
amazing game.
My hope, and this I did have that thought because I do worry sometimes about picking older stuff on these lists. I think BGA has given it new life a little bit. Not to say that is a big part of our audience or anyone voting, but it does seem like it gets played a lot in BGA as well.
Oh, guys, you know, they say it's won or lost in the trenches, and this is sort of the trenches.
How's your gumption do?
As it were. Oh, no, the gumption is strong.
Okay.
But
just want to check in on that.
The mind is perplexed.
Okay.
The weak, you know, never been thought about or used for me. The hard thing, right, is there's this sort of like get the tile laying thing going. There's just quite a few of them that are highly regarded, so you don't have to like Neelan went to Blue Lagoon, and we don't have to all immediately draft, you know, all the other ones that we're worried about because they're there.
Yeah, but I mean, exactly. And once I pick the best one, then it feels less pressing, right?
No, not exactly. I actually would not have picked Blue Lagoon second, but Tigris and Euphrates, certainly. No question. These are hard calls, huh? What?
True. No, you're right.
You feel it. I feel it.
Feel it to your bones.
Man, there are too many like ways that you could go with this and like not end up with a list that you're happy with. Man, this is brutal. All right, I am going to stick with what I love and what I know best. Here in the top of his echelon of games, I am going to select I've second guessed myself. I walked away. I walked to the edge of the pool.
Where's the gumption?
No. This is actually gumption in action.
Okay.
That's what you're seeing right now.
This is gumption distilled. This is true gumption.
Yeah, this is Ude Gumption. Okay, it is like my heart versus my brain, you know?
Yeah, I get it.
I know that it could be won or lost here, and I'm just getting made fun of for like the week on end. I hate it. I hate that. I don't like it. I didn't like it in middle school. I didn't like it in high school. I don't like it now.
Is that really a legit fear for the draft?
They can't see whether I'm nodding or winking. Okay, I'm going to go classic. And I'm going to go with my heart. I'm going to select Medici, a auction game by Reiner Knizia. This, to me, represents rock solid Reiner Knizia auction. It has a little bit of that classic flair that Nealon is getting with Tigris and Euphrates or whatever, pots and hell. Medici works super, super well with 5 or 6 players, and a game that you play, and it feels like you're playing a real board game, but it can be played with 6 people, done in under an hour. Absolutely lovely. I do believe there is a new version coming into print next year from Steamforged. I mean, redoing Reiner Knizia right now is a big thing. This is a very colorful, very vibrant auction game that I feel like might not be the shiny object on anyone's list, but I would be hard pressed to find people who are like, oh, I really don't like Medici. This feels like the potatoes of my list, you know, that were put in the fire by Vadis, the hottest of the hot. My potato pick, Medici.
All right, so I need a potato pick here. Did not expect to be doing a potato pick here, but here I am. No, I'm going to also go with my heart. This may not be the most popular, but this is, of the list of games that is left over, probably my favorite. This is one of Reiner's heavier games and his take on train/stock market games. This is going to be Stephenson's Rocket, which also had a new release a couple years ago. I just love how cutthroat this game is. I love the way that the stock manipulation works. I love the veto power where you're trying to aim your train one way and then you go around and someone can potentially veto that and move it in a different direction. Just feels really, really rough, really cutthroat in a way that I really enjoy. And it's got just a really nice, area control aspect to it. A game that I absolutely love, my favorite of his remaining games. So that is going to be Stephenson's Rocket as my pick for the third round.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how popular it is, but whatever.
Got to appeal to all kinds, the train
true.
Gamers.
That's true. And then for my next pick, I'm going to go the opposite way, try to cover my bases here. Stephenson's Rocket is an older design, 1999, and it's among his heavier games and very cutthroat. For the next pick, I'm going to go with a newer design that is quite light and is not cutthroat at all. That is going to be My City. My City, the Reiner Knizia legacy game from a couple of years ago. Did it win the Spiel? I can't remember. It was certainly nominated for a Spiel. This is a game I'm also hoping that has had a little more life breathed into it, both from the BGA implementation, which I've played a couple times, and from the fact that I'm seeing it pop up on Target and big box stores. So a game that is very accessible and a legacy game that you can sort of play with non-gamers, which is a fun twist on it. So again, Knizia breaking new ground in areas that we feel like are already well worn, but here he is with a legacy game. And so my first pick of the fourth round is going to be My City.
I was going to select this, but then I realized I had to lead with my heart, and selecting a legacy game would not appeal to my base, even if it may have been ultimately more popular.
Yeah, I would have picked it if it had gone back to me, and I knew that there was a chance if it got past Mark, because I figured Kellen wasn't going to.
It's just so dull, guys.
Oh,
I can't even. Like, it's like fun by way of it's a legacy game. Great. With the fourth pick of the draft, I will select a BGB favorite game of both Nealon and I, as well as Shut Up and Sit Down. This game is Taj Mahal. And I would say this is in the running for Nealon and I's favorite Reiner Knizia game, if not one, then two. In Taj Mahal, you are both playing a really tight area control game, but you're playing that by way of sort of pseudo poker hands of cards, where you have to tap out of battles when you need to get the benefit that you want, to set up the chain that you need. There is nothing in the marketplace like Taj Mahal. Reiner Knizia has not re-implemented this 1,000 other times. Yes, I know Beowulf exists. Yes, it's not as good as Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal is one that you owe it to yourself to try. You've probably heard Neelan and I both describe it every year on the top 50 list of all-time games, and that's because it's bona fide. Taj Mahal, the fourth game for my list.
That is a dirty trick you're playing right there. Roping me into your draft, like as if I endorsed
Taj Mahal.
it.
You would
That
pick my
is-
list. You would pick my list right now.
It's not up to you to decide. Okay.
Callan's really going for that $50.
Yeah, now that there's money on the line.
Yeah.
No, it's just kind because I do think like what are some of the stronger picks. I'm kind of a little bit surprised that some of these haven't been picked, but well, not necessarily that they haven't been picked, but I think they're being left to get snatched up as late fives, and it's tempting just to nip some of that nonsense in the bud.
Just take it. Block it.
Exactly. Oof.
You get to round out your list right here, Neil, and you're done.
No, this is
Two more minutes, you're done.
Oh no, you're right. Sorry, this is 4 and 5, isn't it?
Yeah, you double down.
Yeah, sorry. For some reason, I was thinking I had to pick 3 more.
A lot of sodium in a double down.
So there's that, and I guess I just don't know what the other one would be.
Over 2,000 milligrams.
Of sodium in a double down.
99% of your sodium for the day in one sandwich.
You get it done. Just eat it. Get that.
I don't feel good about this at all.
We're talking about sandwiches here.
Yeah.
No,
Don't stress so much
sorry.
about the double
You
down.
guys
Just enjoy it.
talking about sandwiches. Okay, I'll just commit to it. The dilemma.
Okay, we're going to check to see if you're paying attention. How much % of your daily sodium is in a double?
I'm going to say all of it, at least 5 times as much.
no.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Wrong. 98%.
98%.
98%, Neil. You
Good as
should be paying
100.
attention.
What about cholesterol? Want to weigh in?
Like that's at least 5 times as much cholesterol as you need. Okay, my number 4 pick. I think it would be very remiss of any of us to close this out with not having picked beloved community favorite. I see you're all nodding along with me as well, so you all know what I'm going for. I might as well not even say it at this point. It's kind of bizarre, actually, if you think about it. That no one's picked
I
it
don't know
at
what
this
you're
point.
about
I
to
have
pick.
no idea.
No,
I think you're going to snatch a Callan pick right here. You're going to do it, aren't you? I feel like
I think I'm gonna pick something that is going to get picked if I don't pick it. I'll say that much. Okay, it's gonna be Babylonia. I think Babylonia is a community favorite. There's a lot of love for Babylonia in our Discord. My fear in picking it is that having both it and Blue Lagoon maybe play in the same pool a little bit, but I think that they're different enough. In fact, they sort of flex in opposite directions to some extent, while still being like tile laying games where blocking is the order of the day. But I love both of these games. Like Babylonia is another one that has kind of been off my list because I only played it the one time, but I've now returned to it a couple of times this year and loved my time with it. It's just devious in a lot of ways. That's Babylonia. My 5th pick is harder. I think I might... No, that's not right. It's not going to be that. My 5th pick is going to be Mille Fiori. This is a newer game. I think one that is gaining in popularity a little bit. It feels kind of very combo-y in the way that like the Gunshot's Clever Games is. You're kind of satisfyingly bouncing around the board, collecting points, competing in different mini games with people. This is one of the more delightful games I've played in recent years. I believe it made it into my top 50 last year. I really, really, really like Mille Fiori. It's also a lovely, gorgeous production. That is my 5th pick.
All right, Neelan. I was saving Babylonia for my 5th.
Yep, I thought someone had to be.
I mean, I don't know, though. Here's the thing, right? There are, like, you've still got Samurai, right? Which has a lot of ratings on BGG. It's just colder, but, equally as impressive. I mean, more impressive. Like, 10 times more people have ranked Samurai than Babylonia. And then you have, Yellow and Yangtze, which is, for all intents and purposes, 80% the same game as Tigris and Euphrates. And the last 20% is more in tune with what modern Euro players like. Like, you could tell me if these both released back in the day, Yellow and Yangtze would be the one that is currently more popular than Tigris and Euphrates. With that said, I don't know. I do need that one, right? And if I was picking my homer pick would be the Ingenious, the real tile laying game. But that will not win me this draft. Ingenious will not win me this draft, nor will Ingenious Travel Edition, the edition for 2 players that's smaller for some reason, and I own both Ingenious and Ingenious Travel Edition. With the 5th pick of the draft, I think I cannot do anything but select Yellow and Yangtze. I really like Yellow and Yangtze. It is getting re-released again next year. Common theme with a game called Huang? I don't know how to pronounce it. But Yellow and Yangtze is Tigris and Euphrates. I would say it's 80% Tigris and Euphrates. And it trades away some of the harshness for a little bit more Euro-ness. It's a little bit more Care Bear. So I am swallowing some Care Bears here in this moment. But an absolutely fantastic game, a lovely production, one everyone owes it to themselves to try. But I would say if you don't like Tigris and Euphrates, you won't like Yellow and Yangtze, because again, these are the closest siblings to each other, just as Nealon and Kellen, when we go out for coffee together, we both have the curly hair. They say one's Nealon, one's Kellen. Who has the better name? I can tell you the baristas say Nealon.
This is true.
We confirmed that this weekend.
Happened.
But he selects Tigris with the number 1 pick. Maybe overvalued, maybe just right. I pick Yellow and Yangtze with the number 5 pick. That is definitely good value.
Value.
5th pick.
I won't deny it.
Yellow and Yangtze.
I love the split vote. I love the
I
Tigris
know,
vote.
I know. But it's Nealon set himself up for that.
Yeah,
By
I agree.
He chose to
I
go
agree.
first.
I don't think
He
it's that
put
much of
himself
a
in this
split
position.
vote. People that like
put
Tigris
himself
do
in
not
this
like Yellow. I will say that much.
That's not true.
That's
But
a
by
blanket
by
generalization,
function
Nealon.
of being like, oh, I'm a true
Well,
believer
exactly.
in Tigris. Yeah, for sure. The people who legitimately are like, you couldn't possibly play Yellow and Yangtze, only Tigris for me, are tryhards.
I would agree with that.
You guys are both slandering our listeners, and I won't have it. All
No
right.
one's going to pick your list, Mark. You don't
Last
need
pick.
to pick a 5th pick.
So it's crazy. Like, we've gone through how many games? We've gone through 14 games, and there's so many great games left over. And this is all one designer. It's unbelievable. I just want to shout out a couple games that I don't think were ever going to be picked, but Diamonds in the Rough, Knizia games that I like that are not among his top.
Do not pick
Municipal
Mark
games.
because he mentioned any of these games in proximity
I'm
to
not
his
doing
list.
this.
Oh,
I'm not-
yeah, this trick again?
No, I'm not doing it. No, I'm not going to do any big ones. Just really, really Diamonds in the Rough that I've mentioned before that I just want to highlight again. Municipal is a game that would lose me the draft actively if I picked it because it's just so boring. But I have a soft spot for it. Same goes with Raw the Dice game. I think they're going to do a new version of it that I'm very much looking forward to. Just a great The Dice game. Like, there's so many The Dice game versions of games nowadays that leave it to Knizia to do a really, really good version with the Raw the Dice game, which I'd recommend. But the game that I'm going to pick is, again, there's so many good ones to pick, but I'm going to go with another classic and a Knizia card game this time, High Society. Just such a clean design, so clever. I love the Knizia twist where for those who don't know, you're all playing like rich folks who are bidding money to have these prizes that they're showing off to their other rich friends. And the twist is that if you end the game with the least amount of money, you are ineligible to win the game. I've always liked that. It's a card game, so there's not much setup, very easy to teach. Just a great game, again, with that emergent theme that you wouldn't necessarily think would come out, but always does when you're playing High Society. So rounding out the list and the draft with High Society for my last pick.
It is absolutely mental that games like Samurai, Battle Line, Shoten Toten, Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation, Amon-Re, Through the Desert, Blue Moon City, Blue Moon Legends, Witchstone even, Winner's Circle, like just absolute bangers.
Yeah.
And
It's
then the
unbelievable.
Llama. Thank God no one selected Llama. That is going to do it for this episode. I will read out the lists. You will go to boardgamebarrage.com/vote.
Yes.
Draft, I think.
/draft or /vote.
Or /vote, boardgamebarrage.com/vote, boardgamebarrage.com/draft. And you will vote, and one person who votes will win a $50 gift card. We will email you. You don't have to vote for the winner, just vote for the best list, the list that makes your heart sing. We have Nealon with Tigris and Euphrates, Blue Lagoon, Lost Cities, Babylonia, and Mille Fiori. You have Kellen with Zoo Vadis, The Quest for El Dorado, Medici, Taj Mahal, and Yellow and Yangtze. You have Mark with Raw, Modern Art, Stephenson's Rocket, My City, and High Society. You can't go wrong with any of these guys.
That's true.
Reiner Knizia, you've done it again.
I think this is going to be one of the tightest fights we've had. This is... I don't... Yeah, I think this is like... These are all great lists.
I was going to try to make a joke about a tight transformer, but it got a little weird in my mind. And that's going to do it for the show. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to Heart Society Music for their song, What's on Your Mind, Kid, for their album, Wake the Queens. You can find us in all forms of social media at Twitter, BRD Game Barrage, at Instagram, Board Game Barrage. You can find us at Discord at BoardGameBarrage.com/Discord. I think that someone could draft 5 games that we didn't draft and potentially beat us.
That's very true. That's
how
crazy.
Deep Reiner Knizia rolls. One of you will win $50. One of us will win $50. We hope you have enjoyed the draft. We love you, Mr. Knizia. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Leaving out.
I'm high. I'm ready. I want you to save me from myself, baby.
3 and 2 and 1.
Why are you saying and?
Okay, this is my choir days. Do you understand that there's a beat and there's a half beat?
A one,
are you
two,
moron?
1, 2,
What,
3.
you think we're in 4/4?
Every time.
Actually, I don't. I literally don't. I don't know what I'm saying. All right, let's do it again.
That's a great
No,
one.
3. I clapped poorly.
Okay.
Wow, I've never had that happen. I just like blew out
Yeah.
my own ear.
I feel like a lot of the times when you're recording your test stuff back, I can hear it back through the mic, so it might be louder than usual.
Ow. I mean, I like.
You
it
like
gets
that when
me
you hear
going,
yourself?
you know? 3, 2, 1. Listen, we're gonna take it.
I broke my Lego.
You broke your
You
Lego?
broke your leg?
My Lego. I just have this like Lego piece on my desk, and I broke it in a way that was not obvious as to how to fix it easily.
Don't the Transformers just kind of come back
Yeah,
together?
the Bumblebee Lego.
Yeah, you hit the button. There is a Lego Optimus Prime for what it's worth.
They actually made one?
Quite impressive. It does
Not
actually
in this- not in this
Not in
room,
this
right?
room. No. I keep that one in the safe. No, I bought it for my brother though. It's kind of impressive. It like actually does transform, which is wild.
Don't blame your brother. Okay.
Kellen and I believe spoke of this when we demoed this, possibly in a boaters, possibly in a boaters, possibly in a boaters.